Hi, Jules here. Today I'm chatting with Michael Klim, world champion swimmer and genuinely one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet. In this episode, we dive into the first chapter of his story, moving to Australia, finding his feet, and eventually becoming one of the greatest swimmers in our history. Along the way, he broke 21 world records and even introduced his own freestyle stroke, the straight arm style that athletes are still using today. But we begin with possibly the most pressing question. Michael, I have to say, I think I've got to ask one of the most important questions to start with, though. You might even know where this is going. How did you come to be on the album cover of a Foo Fighters album?
Well, look, it's a bizarre thing, and I never expected that I'd be on the cover of a rock band album, and not only on the cover of a rock band album, but my favorite rock band.
Yeah.
But in the Foo Fighters, and look, the story is pretty funny and simple actually. And in the lead up to the 2000 games, we were traveling overseas. We do a lot of training overseas. We were training in Hawaii, and I bought one of their albums. And as in the States, in America, you'd get a temporary tattoo with the album. So I put the album the tattoo, on my shoulder. And we were at just a normal competition back home in Oz. And one of the photographers snapped me with that tattoo. Sony Music in Australia must have seen that photo in the paper and thought it was a good idea to promote their upcoming tour and the upcoming album. So they thought Foo Fighters and I guess that's sort of and the rest is history. But the funny thing is, I've never actually met the band, and I've always been plugging to try and. I mean, they've got an upcoming tour, so hopefully this will get somehow through the grapevine. We'll get to Dave Grohl, and I can finally thank him for making me rock famous. Look, I never actually thought. I've had a bit of in the last few weeks, I've actually had some, weird pinch me moments when it comes to rock and roll, because I got to meet Metallica when they were touring in Melbourne, and I spent a little bit of time with them before the Melbourne concert. And this only came about because of my ambassadorship with Lifeblood. And and Lifeblood obviously is a great charity that really is doing amazing things, and I've been, I guess, blessed to have the opportunity to promote such a great cause of blood and plasma donation in this country that is so much needed. But I never thought that would get me backstage mixing with Metallica and be part of the same campaign. So you never know. Like even from the swimming pool, you might end up rubbing shoulders with rock stars one day. So for the kids listening out there, you never know what life will take you.
Exactly right. Just be in the moment and go with it.
That's it.
Oh, wow. And surely you'd think that Dave Grohl would like to meet the man who was on his album cover. So I've got my fingers crossed for you when he
I hope
comes
so.
out.
Hopefully I've got an in. I mean, not many people have been on his album cover. So let's hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, Michael, did you always want to be a swimmer? Like when you were little, is that what you were dreaming of?
Look, I always wanted to swim, and that's because it was something that, and I think a lot of this happens subconsciously and without too much intention. But I think swimming became a very kind of a meditative kind of grounding practice for me from a very early age. And I was in a family that moved around the world a lot. I lived in 5 different countries before the age of 11. So changing cultures, changing languages. I was I guess, always trying to fit into all these different environments. But the one that I managed to kind of just slide in seamlessly every time was the swimming pool and the swimming club kind of environment. And it did help that I was relatively good at it, and I started from a very early age of 2 when I was living in India and swam in Poland and and Germany and Canada, and eventually in Australia at the age of 11. So I think, as a kid, all you want is a little bit of recognition. You want something that your friends know you for, and that, it becomes your identity very early on in the piece. And that's all I can remember. And I never knew that swimming could, get me on an album cover of a rock band or on the top podium at the Olympic Games. But that didn't come probably until the age of about 14, 15, 16, where I started, winning national age titles and becoming sort of identified by some amazing coaches and being invited to train at the Australian Institute of Sport. So up to that point, it really is just a passion project. It's a hobby. It's something that is, I think I always was a bit of a loner as a kid. So I would go and shoot hoops by myself. I would play other sports, but I paint a little bit. I do creative stuff. So there was always an element of me that liked, or I guess sports and any sort of activities where I could be in my head a little bit. And, it's funny because I put the paintbrush or the pencil down for years, and it was only COVID that kind of got me back into it again. And so yeah, but I think, swimming was, I think, for my personality, which I was back then, a very introverted kid. And also, I never thought I had attention deficit disorder, but I definitely do. So, I always had, showed great potential in every report card, but I was very easily distracted. So, but I think those, swimming helped me to, stay focused, and painting and all those different sort of pastimes where I think they rounded me off pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that you traveled around a lot, and coming to Australia, that was your last big change. But with all that movement, like, what did you find most challenging?
I think I was always really self-conscious, and I think Mike knows this. Our mutual friend Mike knows this, that my nickname is Lumpy, and my nickname is Lumpy. Was Lumpy from swimming days because I was quite a chubby kid, and it was chunky at school. So so I sort of had to. I was always really self-conscious with my appearance, my accent, my looks as well. When I arrived, with this kind of undercut and blonde hair, and so there was, I think. Yeah, I think, and it was the swimming that helped me kind of fit in. But it was, that being self-conscious all the time was probably the hardest thing of changing all the time.
Yeah, no, that's understandable, especially moving around. Sometimes it's hard to establish a friendship group or connections if you're moving. So I get that. Now, in this swimming world, you have been incredibly successful. Like, to name some of your achievements, in 17 years of world-class swimming, you broke 21 world records, competed in 3 Olympic Games, winning 6 medals, including golds, bronze and silver. You held world records in 100-meter butterfly and freestyle events, won multiple medals in Commonwealth Games as well, later awarded Athlete of the Year, and the OAM. It goes on and on. Like, you changed and revolutionized swimming in such a profound way. But I guess the question is, for me, there are so many hopefuls and so many people out there that would love to achieve half of what you've done. What is it, do you think, that set you apart? Why were you able to go on and just achieve such incredible feats?
Look, it's I sometimes, when I hear my accolades or my stat sheet, it is hard to sort of comprehend, because you don't set out to achieve all these things along the way. I think initially for me, I wanted to when I got to Victoria, I wanted to be the best swimmer in Victoria, and then I achieved that, and then I became the best age group swimmer in Australia. And step by step, I was able to progress in a really nicely way. But um, I feel that I had a really strong work ethic, and for me, because I wasn't physically any different or any more gifted than anyone else in that swimming pool. And later on, especially at the Olympic level, I was, shorter, probably not as strong, and technically not as gifted as my competitors like Ian Thorpe and Alex Popov and Van den Hoogenband. So I had to find, with that hard work, some almost like my trump cards that would, give me an advantage. And I found that because I had interest in other sports in my upbringing from basketball and tennis and water polo, I was more an athletic swimmer. So I felt that I could gain an advantage in skills that some other guys weren't that good at. And at that point in time, dives and turns and swimming when all that developed. And so I became a really good diver, which it seems like a given, right? But
Yeah.
the first guy to the 15-meter mark's got a much better chance of winning the race than if you're last. So I ended up, making sure that I was always pretty much first at that 15-meter mark, and then working on skills like underwater. But then I think the other thing besides the hard work is that I tried to emulate the best that were around at the time. And at the time
Yes.
was Alexander Popov. And that didn't really work because I
Okay.
wasn't 6'8" and
Yeah.
I couldn't swim I couldn't swim in the same technique that he had. And so I had to find my own uh, methodology and how to go about it. So I guess revolutionized my technique completely. So I went from trying to swim like Alex Popov to inventing that straight arm freestyle, which became,
Yes.
which now is very, very common in the world of swimming, especially sprint freestyle. So, I had that working hard piece, the innovation with technique. Then I think the other one that made me I think achieve and gave me sustainability in the sport is continually evolving with the technology in our sport. So we had I think, just after the '98 World Championships, when I became world champion, the super suits, or the fast skin suits, as you call them,
Yes.
they arrived into the scene, and I was sponsored by Speedo. So I got I used that as an advantage and got to test every possible fabric and fit, and so work closely with them on finding the best suit that would suit me, and gave me almost an advantage. So really using all the
Mm.
different resources that were available to me. And I think the last couple, um, I think are really kind of important and have been profound in life after sport, is that I've become really resourceful, and it I don't, even with we were chatting earlier about the
Mm.
amount of different things I've got going on. It's I'm
Yeah.
lucky that I try and surround myself with people that are experts in their fields. And so when we were living at the Institute of Sport, or then once with Australian Swimming, I was able to extract everything I needed to from the sports science crew, the sports medicine crew, the massages, the physios, etc. So I think as athletes, we have countless of resources
Mm.
available to us, and even more nowadays, especially with this new era of technology. So I think being resourceful also gave me a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
And I think, and then ultimately, I think I don't know if it's love or if it's passion or if it's drive. I don't know or if it's all combined. I don't know. I think you just get fueled by, a little bit of success that then carries on to the next kind of event, and you want to,
Yeah.
you can do better, and you can improve. And wouldn't say I was a perfectionist, but I felt there was always areas I could improve in.
Yeah. And you just touched on that at the end there about that self-motivation, that drive. Did you have any habits or sayings or mantras or something that helped you get up and go each day or get through those really tough races or anything?
Uh, Habits. I think I definitely had. I think this routine and structure is important in sport, and for me, I think I became very. I wouldn't say superstitious, but I definitely um, became borderline OCD
Yep,
at some point where I
yep,
would, check my bag, 10 times before I went to practice or swimming meet. I'd always have spare goggles. I'd always try and foresee potentially what
yep.
might happen. But unfortunately, in sport, it's the things you can't foresee that you
Yeah.
have to be ready for.
Oh, it's very
So
true.
I think routine and almost ritualistic kind of actions, I think gave me a lot of confidence as well. So, and then I learned a lot about myself, and I
Mm.
knew that I couldn't spend hours before my race at the pool because my nervous system would just burn out. I'm a very sort of, even though I'm pretty slow outside of the pool, I was kind of a very explosive and lactic machine outside of it, and my nervous energy was the same. So I knew that as soon as I walk into the pool, I start burning nervous energy,
Yeah.
and by the time I get up on the blocks, I'd be depleted. So, I would try and time my arrival so that I had enough time to warm up, put my suit on, have a quick chat with my coach, minimal preparation time, and then go straight on
Wow.
into the marshalling room and block. So, and that comes with knowledge and racing and experience. So, I think I developed that over a couple of years in '97 and '98, where I did 150 races in one calendar year, just so I could
Wow.
practice that kind of ritualistic routine of getting ready. And that I think that's I wouldn't say I had any sayings, but I think I had
Yep.
a structure.
Yep. And did you, in terms of mental preparation, did you have to do anything else? I mean, obviously you really got to know yourself and understand how you worked pre-race and things, but in terms of like visualizations or anything like that, was mental preparation a big part of your success?
Oh, absolutely. And I think all that work was done prior to coming to the pool on finals
Yep.
night. And a lot of for me, the more clear-headed I was on race night, the easier those races were, because I think the more you have going through your head, the more you have to think about, or the more doubts you have, or
Mm.
the race goes for 48 seconds or 51 seconds for me back then. They're going much faster these days. But yeah, so it's basically for us an opportunity just to express ourselves and just kind of let it flow. And it's not that much you can do on the race day, but you can definitely prepare. And I used to do visualization. I used to listen to certain classical music, and I still do
Yeah.
actually for relaxation, for downtime. So there was those sort of that preparation came as we were training and getting closer to the event. But just staying clear-headed in the lead up.
Yep.
I couldn't listen to music, and I didn't listen to the Foo Fighters or Metallica behind the blocks, because I would have blown my head off if I did that. So if anything, I just needed to stay nice and calm.
Well, you probably would have chosen Foo Fighters if you could have listened to
Yeah, that's right.
that. Now, statistically, we know that, especially for athletes, when they transition out of something like a sport or something, especially when they've done it at an elite level, it can be really difficult and they can face
Mm,
lots of mental challenges. When you first transitioned out of swimming, you went into a whole lot of different things. There was philanthropy and mentorship, and you had your brand, your skincare brand, Milk. Did you made it look like that was a really simple transition out of something so
mm.
physical. Was it that easy, or like how did you manage that transition?
Look, I think if for me. I think naivety helped me to kind of get through some periods of it. And I think I'm fortunate enough that that work ethic that I developed in the pool, I carried that over into life after sport. And I don't know if it had the same meaning because I wanted to prove myself in life after sport, like I wanted to prove myself in the pool. But I approached things with, a great tenacity, with a lot of perseverance, kind of a no die attitude, and I think a lot of I guess the weaknesses that I had from a lack of tertiary education or business training or experience, I made up for that kind of with that tenacity and that willingness to give things a try. And I think
Yeah.
I learned so much through that. And starting a business, which we ran for 13 years until my exit, and then starting a family business in 1997 with the swim schools and Klim Swim, which is still going to this day.
Yeah.
So getting involved in charities with Lifeblood and most recently with the Klim Foundation. I think and again, I'm falling back on people that are experts in their field. So I'm not pretending that I can run this foundation on my own, because I certainly can't. I can use the things I can to our advantage and use my network, but also use the skills that I've developed over the stretch. But we've still been able to collate an amazing board within the Klim Foundation, have an amazing sort of group of people I'm working with within Lifeblood as well. So in all areas, that even with the new venture with the new amenities range Klima that is coming out soon, again, I've surrounded myself with the best amenities company in the world. So I think I was good at identifying where those weaknesses were, like I did with my
Yeah.
stroke back then, and then just trying to I guess breach those gaps, and but always continue to keep driving, because I know, and I've got a partner, Michelle, who's really creative, and she takes some beautiful photos and plays music and is a producer, and she's
Wow.
got a great eye for things, and her approach is that she loves for things to be perfect before they are released, and because it's before it's seen to the rest of the world. And I very early on in the Milk and Co days, I realized that speed to market, whatever you're going to do, is probably going to beat the people that are waiting for that perfect moment
Yeah.
until you launch something. And we've been able to kind of blend the two strengths that we have, as Michelle is a big part of pretty much everything that I
Yeah.
do. So I'll get some great advice from people in my life, but then I keep sort of pushing the envelope on every step that we take.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for joining me today. Make sure you hit follow so you don't miss part 2, where Michael opens up about the chapter that pushed him far beyond anything he faced in the pool, and how he rebuilt himself through one of the toughest periods of his life.